talked to one time from Alabama. He called. He said he was using God's name in vain repeatedly. And I said, listen, let me ask you something. I said, that body of yours one day is going to die, correct? He said, yeah. I said, well, why would you curse the only one who could save you from death? He said, what? I said, why would you curse the only one that can save you from that 6-foot hole? He said, I don't know about that. You got my duck call order? I said, yep. I said, duck call's on the way. Boom, hung up. About 10 minutes went by and the phone rang and this old boy said, hey. He said, it's me again. I said, what about it? He said, that kind of got to me. I never thought about that. I'm going to die. And I don't have any hope. I said, tell you what you ought to do. Where are you from? He said, Alabama. I said, you ought to get your rig and drive over here, and I'll show you how your body can come forth from the dead. He said, well, I just might do that. 1 week later, I knock on the door. This bull steps in there, shoulders that wide. He said, you know who I am? I said, no. He said, I'm that fellow from Alabama. I said, who's that we? He said, that's my buddy. I said, y'all come in here a minute. I shared with him the gospel of Jesus, what those symbols represent. The backwater's up in the yard that year. Old drift and trash, limbs. But at 9 or 10 o'clock at night, I shared the gospel with him. They bawled like babies. We walked down out there in the front yard. I cleared me out a hole in that backwater. I baptized them both. They got back in that old truck of theirs wet. Didn't even change clothes. I said, you boys want to change clothes? No, we all right now, man. So they jumped back in the truck and never heard from them again.